one of the most popular cartoons on television at the time, supported by a line of action figures, produced by one of the most successful, most prolific animation studios, canceled before it could finish its second season, outflanked by a shifting political landscape and the negative perception of its over-the-top rock and roll glamorization of vigilante military violence. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of SWAT Kats, the Radical Squadron. SWAT Kats is a 25-episode animated series that originally aired over 2 seasons from 1993 to 1994. It's Top Gun meets the Ninja Turtles. No, scratch that. It's Iron Eagle meets Heathcliff, but if Heathcliff were a lieutenant commander. Wait, what am I talking about? It's Firefox meets Rude Dog and the Dweebs, except with cats. Meow. SWAT Kats features Jake Razor Clausen and Chance T-Bone Furlong, former agents of the Enforcers, a militarized police organization, redundant, that patrols Megakat City. Former agents because they disobeyed a direct order from their superior officer, Commander Farrell, to disengage during combat. Long ago, but not that long ago, they were in a fighter jet on the tail of a dangerous villain called Dark Cat. They had weapons lock and were about to fire, saving the day, until Commander Farrell not only pulled rank, but executed a highly dangerous flyby maneuver touching wingtips with Razor and T-Bone's aircraft, causing them to go into a tailspin and crash into the brand new Enforcers headquarters. Commander Farrell blamed Razor and T-Bone for the destruction to the building and Dark Cat's escape. On top of that, he kicked them off the Enforcers and busted them down to work the salvage yard where the military dumps all of its trash. You break it, you buy it, and Razor and T-Bone were going to have to pay for the damages to Enforcer headquarters out of their salaries, maybe for the rest of their 9 lives. But this particular punishment turned out to be a blessing in disguise for these 2 cats and all the other cats in Megakat City. Because Razor and T-Bone are also engineering geniuses, and dropping them in the middle of a military salvage yard gave them all the pieces they needed to build their own one-of-a-kind fighter plane called the Turbokat, a myriad of prototype weapons that would make Batman jealous, as well as a secret hidden hangar bay under the salvage yard, allowing them to bypass the authority of the Enforcers altogether. They keep their identities secret while they take the fight straight to the bad guys, volunteers in a battle for peace who have tasked themselves with keeping everyone safe from the forces of evil and all the other criminal scum who rear their heads in Megakat City. SWAT Kats was created by Christian and Yvon Tremblay years before it aired on television. 2 self-taught artists from Montreal, they bypassed a traditional university education and spent several years in their parents' basement teaching themselves about art, animation, and developing the basic concepts for SWAT Kats. Relatable. They sold their concept for 2 anthropomorphic fighter pilot cats to Hanna-Barbera the old-fashioned way. They looked up studios and magazines that they thought might be interested, compiled a list, and started pitching. It took 5 years before they sold it, but by then they had developed a fully realized world, a roster of characters, and plans for an enterprise. Once they were working with the Hanna-Barbera team, some changes would be made. Chuck and Jaeger were changed to T-Bone and Razor. Some of the characters they created were dropped. Some new ones were developed. Davis Doy was producing. Disney television veteran Robert Alvarez would direct. The writers were ready. The animators were ready. Season 1 premiered in the United States on September 11th, 1993, amidst a tornado of political fury over violence on television, in video games, and anything that was intended for children. See, 1993 was the year that some of the seeds planted in the 1990 Children's Television Act and the 1990 Television Program Improvement Act came due. The Children's Television Act of 1990 focused on breaking the cycle of television programs existing as non-educational content, whose function was to sell toys and related products. The Television Program Improvement Act focused on the amount of adult content in a show, whether it be violence, language, or sexual, and when it was allowed to air. 1993 was the end of a 3-year probationary period that the federal government granted to the major television networks and producers to clean up their own act or face legislative action forcing them to. It was also the year Congress held hearings to assess what needed to be done about the increasing frequency and severity of violence in video games. Because a year earlier, in 1992, 3 of the most controversial video games that had made up to that point hit arcades and home consoles. Mortal Kombat, Night Trap, and Lethal Enforcers, thanks to better graphics technology and 16-bit gaming systems, brought an unprecedented degree of realism to the visuals depicted in games. That's relevant because a year earlier, in 1991, Ted Turner bought two animation studios, Hanna-Barbera and Ruby Spears. Turner was launching a new cable channel called Cartoon Network on the strength of those two back catalogs. SWAT Kats would be developed by Hanna-Barbera under the ownership of the Turner Broadcasting System. So, in 1993, with violent crime statistics surging like the 1970s, with parents groups pressuring politicians to do something, Ted Turner publicly endorsed a rating systems for television like the ones the movies had been using since the 1960s. Ted was going to be the model of self-regulation. Violent media aimed at kids would have to go.
I spoke out in the Cable Programmers Association and the NCTA that we should take an active part in this. And I'm glad that under Jack's leadership, the broadcasters have also agreed now, and I think this is a step forward for our society, rating these programs.
That was at odds with a marketing team that was ready to push out their new cartoon series featuring a militarized police force and a prototype superjet fighting it out in a city full of talking cat people. SWAT Kats was launched quietly, softly, without a lot of fanfare. Deals were being made for toys and games and such, but that was happening with whispered voices, so Dad wouldn't hear. The cast of SWAT Kats featured several industry veterans like Charlie Adler, Tress MacNeille, Jim Cummings, Neil Ross, and Rob Paulson. But it also featured a post-Batman the Animated Series pre-Garfield and Friends, Mark Hamill, and the Frank Megatron Welker.
Next weekend, before we throw you kicking and screaming into the maelstrom that is Toonami, try a dose of the familiar with an entire weekend of superheroes here on Cartoon Network. 6 hours of Super Friends on Saturday, followed by 6 hours of SWAT Kats on Sunday. We'll also give you a small burning taste of Toonami, just to see if you can swallow it. It's Superheroes Weekend next Saturday and Sunday beginning at noon at the future home of Toonami, Cartoon Network.
Despite the lack of a real marketing push, SWAT Kats was winning in the ratings, so much so that a second season was put into production. Taiwan-based Hanho Hung Up Animation, the studio that handled most of the first season, was replaced by Japan's Muku Animation, who had produced episodes 1 through 4. Hanho had worked on shows like The Real Ghostbusters and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but co-creator Christian and Tremblay didn't really like what they were doing with SWAT Kats. In season 2, Muku brought a more anime-inspired look with a darker, more angular aesthetic and more fluid animation. They even created a new opening sequence which would go nicely with the new theme song. For season 1, composers Matt Mahobarak, John Zucker, Randall Chrisman, and Nick Brown delivered a heroic theme inspired by the music of Queen and, in particular, the 1980 Flash Gordon soundtrack. Season 2 saw a shift in musical influence to a heavier, more AC/DC or Metallica sound. Their words, not mine. SWAT Kats was supported by a line of action figures, even if it was just a little bit of support from a company that didn't have the most resources to push a line of action figures. While Remco was a veteran toy brand founded in the 1940s, it had been a while since they had a hit. Not a lot of kids out here begging for buy-bots. 4 roughly 5 to 6 inch figures hit the shelves in 1994, 2 heroes, Razor and T-Bone, and 2 villains, Dark Cat and Dr. Viper. Unfortunately, the line was lacking a centerpiece vehicle or playset of Turbo Cat. White Castle and Carl's Jr. both featured SWAT Kats as premiums in their kids' meals, and there were some dollar store quality gas station toys as well. Action sets with things like plastic handcuffs, sunglasses, and a flash gun. Micro Games of America released an LCD handheld game pitting Razor and T-Bone against giant killer bugs. Better than that, SWAT Kats were featured in a 2D side-scroller by Hudson Soft for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Mostly the cats walking through the city, blasting monsters and stuff, but the gameplay occasionally jumps over to first-person POV and puts you in control of the Turbo Cat while you shower bad guys with missiles from above. The SNES version was released in 1995 and a Sega Mega Drive version was in development, but of course, 1995 was after the show was already canceled. 13 episodes in Season 1 were intended to be followed by another 13 episodes in Season 2, but the series was canceled before the 11th episode of Season 2 aired. Production knew the ratings were good. SWAT Kats was the highest rated syndicated series in 1994. 1995 was supposed to be their big year. Several things factored into cancellation. 1, the low-key initial rollout of the series meant that merchandise wasn't available when the series first aired. By the time the toys hit shelves in Season 2, the accountants were quick to point out that SWAT Kats wasn't moving a lot of merchandise, which seemed like an impossible task given the timing and lack of licensees. 2. Ted Turner was adamant about eliminating violence in programs for kids, especially programs he was in charge of. He said, quote, "We have more cartoons than anybody. The Flintstones, the Jetsons, the Smurfs, Scooby-Doo, they're non-violent. We don't have to worry that we're encouraging kids to kill each other like some of the other cartoon programs do." One of the SWAT Kats writers, Lance Falk, said, quote, "The way I heard it was that Ted Turner himself simply thought the show was too violent for kids, so it was downplayed to fail. Buried on early Sunday mornings, a ratings death slot for this kind of show. No decent merchandise to speak of, though it would have been a toy company's dream. I'm surprised we got to do a second year." And 3, in 1994, Cartoon Network was moving toward in-house creation and production of their own cartoons, featuring new characters, new concepts, and a new direction exclusively for broadcast on Turner stations. Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, the Powerpuff Girls, the kind of shows that not only fit the network and Turner's preferences, but set the tone for a new modern era of cartoons, decreasing the reliance on things that were created in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Some SWAT Kats episodes were released on VHS by Hanna-Barbera through Turner Home Entertainment in 1995. In 2010, Warner Archive released the complete series on DVD as part of their Hanna-Barbera Classics collection. It is currently available on Amazon, or you can stream it on Amazon Prime Video, Google Play, YouTube, and Apple TV. Cancellation did not sit well with creators Christian and Yvon Tremblay, especially since the fans never let go and let them know over the years that they still wanted more cats. SWAT Kats. In 2015, the Tremblays launched a Kickstarter campaign to start the process of bringing the SWAT Kats back to television, and since they owned all the rights to the property, maybe the cinema as well. They hit their $50,000 goal in one day, which would finance the production of the concept art, show bible, 3 scripts, and character designs. Materials they would need to once again pitch the idea to big-time investors who might be able to help cover the high cost of making top-tier animation. Stretch goals of $200,000 and $1 million would have allowed them to produce a 22-minute episode or a 5-episode miniseries respectively. $1.5 million would have paid for a full 70-minute streaming movie. The campaign ended at $141,500, which was enough to produce a 2-minute animation teaser to establish the look of the new series. In 2016, the Tremblays confirmed that production on the 2-minute teaser had begun, and that they were going to start shopping SWAT Kats Revolution to studios. They confirmed that Warner Brothers, who merged with Turner Broadcasting in 1996 and therefore owned everything related to Hanna-Barbera, was interested, but they weren't interested. 4 years later, in July of 2020, the Tremblays offered another update to reassure fans and, more importantly, financial backers of the project that they were in it for the long haul. No matter how expensive it gets, no matter how complicated the process is, no matter how many other forms of content delivery are out there competing for time and eyeballs. Hulu, Netflix, Warner Brothers, Amazon, no matter how many studios have said no. Look. Right now, the anthropomorphic talking cat industry is in a bit of a cool-down phase. The 2019 live-action adaptation of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cats rendered this whole subgenre radioactive to the people with the kind of money it's going to take to get back to the skies. But the fight isn't over, not by a long shot. Christian and Yvon Tremblay have believed in SWAT Kats for nearly 40 years now, and they are willing to spend the next 40 believing in it, if that's what it takes to get it done the way they want it done. SWAT Kats was a beloved animated series that put up big numbers when it counted, but crashed and burned due to man-made turbulence that they could not overcome. Had it arrived at a different time on a different network, perhaps it would already be today one of the all-time legacy brands, instead of watching the skies, waiting for the next departure. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. If you haven't heard, we started streaming on Twitch. Find us at twitch.tv/toygalaxy. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, please visit our Patreon or become a YouTube channel member. Please let us know in the comments down below if you were or are a fan of SWAT Kats. I didn't see the show when it aired, but I did. I may still have a Razor figure somewhere. Picked it up back in the day when it was on store shelves because I was at KB and Toys R Us like every other day. I really miss skipping college classes to go toy shopping, especially when the shelves were crammed with figures that were 3 for $10. That's not a sustainable business model, by the way, for any of the parties involved. But you probably knew that since we're in the future.
That's business 101, baby.
That's business 101, baby.
God.